Watch this.
We've tested more than 30,000 Idahoans, and about 7% have been confirmed COVID cases. Yeah, those numbers keep going up, but are they the ones we should be paying attention to? Firefighters, they not only work together, they live together for days at a time. We take a look at how Boise's fire crews are hoping to keep themselves coronavirus-free. There was probably a time when being able to work from home was, well, considered a job perk. Are we still feeling that way? You asked, Kim Fields answers. Trends. Normally, it's what's popular or preferable for fashion, what is likable or shareable on social media. It's also defined as the general direction in which something is developing, the way something bends. Bending curves, or rather flattening them, is what we've been advised to watch when it comes to COVID-19, as trends have become an important statistic in that collection of information. And every day, if you look at our numbers linearly, we've been going up. New confirmed cases bumping it higher. Some days we get a bigger bump than others. But those are total numbers. So Mike suggests we should look at it differently. Instead of giving us total COVID numbers, why aren't we getting new cases and number of people in hospitals? Shouldn't we be looking at trends rather than totals going forward? That's from our Facebook group. And yes, we have been looking at the trends. It's one of the reasons Idaho is on the path it's on right now with reopening. Our graphs actually heading south. So let's look at the trends. To find the latest official numbers, one needs to look no further than Idaho's own Department of Health and Welfare website. Lots of graphs and numbers classified by cases and county and other demographics. And with about 2,100 confirmed and probable cases across the state, that line is heading upward. But broken down day by day over the last several weeks, we are moving in a more downward direction. So let's start with testing. So far, we've had more than 30,000 Idahoans tested for coronavirus since this all began. The state, they've been compiling how many tests have been done by each health district each day since February 26th, when we had just one. So our greatest number of tests were done on March 23rd. That's this day right here, when more than 1,100 Idahoans were tested for coronavirus. That was in one day, and we kind of bounced around that number for a couple of weeks up until April 13th, which is this day right here. And then we start to see that trend go downward and continue that all the way down to April 21st, when we tested just 115 people across the state. These are the latest numbers that we have on testing. So yes, we have been seeing fewer Idahoans get tested for coronavirus. Compare that to the confirmed number of cases each day on our website, ktvb.com. And if we zoom in here to April 2nd, this would be our greatest total here at 227. 227 people tested positive for coronavirus on April 2nd. We've seen a steady drop in cases since then. And if we go back roughly about 2 weeks, back to April 20th, when we had 58 new cases, you can see that number has remained pretty steady. Our highest daily total at this point between these 2 weeks, just 33 positive tests per day. So while the total number has ticked up, the day-to-day tally, well, that has trended down, which has been our goal. And as far as the number of people in hospitals, those numbers have been tracked as well. We've had 66 deaths in Idaho at this point attributed to coronavirus. And we get new numbers every day right around this time, 5 o'clock. So those could update as we get through the show here. And according to the state website, 201 confirmed COVID cases have spent some time in the hospital, with 83 having been admitted to the intensive care unit. Of the nearly 2,000 confirmed coronavirus cases, the Department of Health and Welfare can confirm more than 1,350 have recovered fully. A group is a group is a group, right? Another question we get on a regular basis has to do with the age-old comparison. If they can, why can't we? And these days that has to do a lot with what's open and what's not. But a lot of them also seem to throw a lot of shade towards daycares, like this one from Jerry. If part of the rationale for not opening local pools is based on the concern that social distancing can't be maintained, how can the movers and shakers justify opening daycare facilities? Or this one from Desiree. I understand the need to open daycares so people can get back to work, but social distancing a bunch of toddlers seems nearly impossible. It seems more feasible to open restaurants full of adults who understand the concept, as well as salons. And finally, this one from David. Tennis courts are safer than daycare centers, but the courts are still locked up. So to be clear, daycares have always been open. They've always been considered essential. But to answer that question about which group setting is better than another group setting, we asked Brandon Atkins. He's an infectious disease and immunology specialist that works for Idaho's Department of Health and Welfare. Here's what he had to say about daycares versus restaurants versus pools.
You have a different census at a pool. Every single day you could have a different population there. You don't know who's going to be going there. It could change every 10 minutes. That's a lot different than a daycare setting.
So basically what you're saying is, like, for example, a wedding. You know who you're inviting to a wedding. You go to a restaurant, you don't know who's going to be there.
Yes, some restaurants may have an idea of who those people are, may have phone numbers, but you always get an influx of people going into those locations. So when you think about a group setting, a daycare is not the same group setting as the pool on a Saturday afternoon. It's just not the same. They are not congruent. They're not at all the same type of risk exposure. You have people coming from all walks of life, from all areas, different age groups that you don't know that would meet in a congregate setting like a pool, whereas a daycare is a very restricted list of individuals who attend that daycare and have very specific guidelines that daycare is following.
So yeah, kind of like how you got your job, it's about who you know. He also said, and this is the biggest difference when it comes to epidemiology and contact tracing. Should a child or caregiver test positive, you know exactly who they may have come into contact with. A pool or a restaurant, unless you're taking down names and numbers of everyone who comes in, you won't know who or how many have been exposed to the virus. Well, if there's one essential business we can all agree on, it's emergency workers and first responders. They've all continued to work through this COVID crisis. Their jobs, though, aren't exactly the same as they were before. Take, for example, firefighters. They work extensive shifts, living together in very close quarters sometimes. So how have they had to adapt to their new normal? Joe Paris spoke with the Boise Fire Department about what is changing about their job during a pandemic and what is their plan of action to prevent coronavirus cases from popping up in their stations.
We're used to sitting down and having dinner at the dinner table in the kitchen, and we've had to adjust and be able to do that 6 feet apart.
Just like your family, the pandemic has forced the Boise Fire family to make important changes. One example for them, their firefighting gear.
That's been one of the big changes, of course, is wearing the full personal protective equipment on every single call that we go on.
That change simply came with experience.
We have had a few instances where we were met in a driveway by a patient that was showing symptoms, and so we learned right away that we had to start wearing that stuff on the way to the scene.
They expected an increase in calls.
In fact, we had kind of modeled things on an increase of 150% in call volume, but what we saw was we headed the other direction.
Firefighters are working 48-hour shifts, and during that time, they're also hyper aware of each other.
They have to social distance in the stations too, and the station, they're living there together for 48 hours, and so wearing masks, when they can't appropriately social distance has been a challenge.
But so far, so good.
We've had 11 members tested so far. Nobody's tested positive, luckily.
To help prevent the spread of coronavirus at the stations, Boise fire teams have worked hard to disinfect everything.
The added disinfection of all of our equipment, the stations, all of that kind of stuff daily, and then after every call.
Boise Fire is ready, though, if infections start popping up at their stations. They learned a lot from watching fire teams in Seattle.
They lost a station worth of people that were out sick, and so we put plans in place in early March to start addressing that. We're covering a lot of that with the disinfection that we're doing. We do have some agreements with cleaning companies to come in and do a deep clean on a station if we had somebody that tested positive while they were on duty.
Okay, so Joe, it may not be an issue now, but what will Boise Fire do if they do have one or even a lot of firefighters start to test positive?
Well, Brian, they have enough firefighters in the Boise area to where they feel comfortable with being able to cover all the area. So if a few firefighters here and there started getting sick, really not an issue. But if you talk about extreme cases, if an entire station, everybody inside got infected, what would they do? Well, Boise Fire tells me they do have plans just in case where they would actually have to close up certain stations and they would be able to cover it. Again, though, Brian, so far only 11 firefighters have been tested. Out of those, 0 positive cases. So for now, they're keeping an eye on it. They're going to continue to disinfect stuff. But Brian, be assured, there are plans in place if things were to get very dire.
Yeah, it'd be taking care of a lot of shifting of shifts, I'm sure, and just keep our fingers crossed that they don't have to cross that bridge when we get there. All right, thanks, Joe. From coffee in the break room to tea parties in the living room/office space. Yes, some of us are still adjusting to working from home. Is it productive or complete chaos? No fancy prom dresses or corsages for high school seniors this year. Yeah, formal dances, they've been wiped from the calendar. Fitting for how one Eastern Oregon school found a way to honor its royalty. Grab your phones and text us your questions about today's show or pretty much anything. 208-321-5614. Make sure to include your name and the hashtag #the208. But be warned, your text could end up being read at the end of the show. We ask for your comments and questions every day here on the 208. It's kind of the way we make it more of a conversation than a traditional newscast. Well, here's one that jumped out to us on the 208 Facebook page from Dave Limber asking us, for those of us that are, is everyone enjoying working from home? Well, Dave, I'm not working from home, so sorry about that. So I can't answer that question. But more than 24 people in our newsroom alone, well, they are working from home, including Kim Fields. And she can't answer that question.
Dave, if you would have asked me that question just a couple of weeks ago, I would have said, heck no, I do not like working from home. Juggling my 3 kids and the demands of my job were on most days almost too much to bear. Like the day they hijacked my live broadcast on the 208.
Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. Oh, here's my daughter making an appearance. Okay.
Working in peace and quiet at my house is nearly impossible.
It's like to be self-isolated at home with a 9 and a 6 and a 7-year-old.
You're trying to shield the cells from being infected.
For one of my stories, I actually sat out in my car to do the interview just so I wouldn't get disrupted. I've even hid in my closet during phone interviews to get away from the kids, but I've always got the job done. A Stanford professor looked at the benefits of working from home in 2015. He found workers were more productive, got more done, worked longer hours, took less breaks, and used less sick time compared to their in-office counterparts. Chris Kirk says on the 208 Facebook page that he's more productive. In fact, almost everyone who commented on our page said they love working from home. Suze Bale loves it so much, she doesn't want to go back to the office. To tell you the truth, I'm not looking to rush back either. It took me a while to adjust, and at first I didn't really like it. But after 7 weeks, I've kind of gotten used to working from home. And besides, is stopping work for a few minutes to have a tea party with your daughter any different than a coffee break in the break room? Apparently it is. The same Stanford professor who said back in 2015 that working from home was more productive now says working from home alongside our kids in unsuitable spaces with no choice and no in-office days will create a productivity disaster for firms. He also thinks a lack of in-person collaboration will lead to a slump in innovation. I think broadcasting live out of your basement using a cell phone is pretty innovative. And what about all those other businesses who've had to pivot to stay viable during this pandemic? The whole work from home productivity debate has been going on long before COVID-19, but I think given the circumstances we're in, most of us are doing a pretty good job at it. And we should remind ourselves to feel grateful we still at least have a job.
It's a good point. Yep, that's a very good point, Kim. And it looks like Kim and the rest of us here at KTVB, we're going to be doing this working from home thing a little bit longer. We just got word today from our company's CEO. We're extending our work from home order until at least May 29th. So get used to seeing Kim from her basement. No prom, no problem. They didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for the royal court of one Eastern Oregon high school. This is what qualifies as pageantry during a pandemic. Get ready for a windy Wednesday. Our own prom queen, Bree Eggers, has your forecast. And don't forget, we want to know what you have to say about the show, what we've talked about, what you want us to talk about. Text us about anything, 208-321-5614. And include your name in the hashtag #the208. Be part of the conversation. We'll respond to some later in the show.
Well, here we are again into the 80s for the second time this year. The only other time we made it into the 80s was at the end of April, April 29th, when it was 88 degrees. So done with the 60s? Yeah, for today, but they'll be back tomorrow as we do have a cool front that's sweeping into the area for the day tomorrow to really change things up. We'll get to those details, but here's the temperature trend for the next 7 days. 60s for Wednesday and Thursday, and then a gradual warm up to summer-like conditions heading into the weekend. We've had high pressure in control for us. It's given us lots of sunshine. Currently, sort of a filtered sunshine, hazy look to the sky with high clouds building in, but that's our cue that some changes are in store for us. This is the cold front that's sweeping through tomorrow, and it may even bring us a spot shower or two as we move through the morning hours tomorrow. So as we take a look at Futurecast, clouds thicken in throughout the night. It's a mild overnight, maybe a spot shower in the morning hours, and then clouds decreasing in the afternoon with cooler temperatures. I think the bigger headline tomorrow, though, when it comes to weather, how windy it is. Wind advisory in effect southwest Idaho, and a high wind warning for gusts up to 50, 55 miles per hour for the eastern Magic Valley stretching into eastern Idaho. Here's how the next couple of days shake out. Relatively cooler when compared to today. Again, mid-60s, but we get the sunshine back on Thursday and the wind will be dying down as well. As we get those clear skies back late Wednesday and also on Thursday, just a heads up for you, our final supermoon of 2020, it's officially full at 4:45 in the morning on Thursday. The moon is at its closest point in orbit to Earth. It's called perigee, and so it can appear on average about 15% brighter, 7% bigger. But since we can't catch that moon, it'll be beneath the horizon when it's officially full on Thursday morning. Try on Wednesday night as the moon rises at 8:13 or Thursday night at 9:32. And here's a look at our 7-day forecast. Again, with 2 days that are cooler than today, we're back into the 60s. Also really want to point out that as the skies clear out tomorrow night into early Thursday morning, we're in for a cold start on Thursday morning. A heads up for gardeners and green thumbs out there. We could see some patchy frost to start Thursday. Plan ahead before you go to bed tomorrow night and then get ready for summer-like warmth into the weekend. You can always find the forecast at ktvb.com. We'll be right back.
Someone pointed this out the other day. The kids who are seniors in high school right now were likely born right around 9/11. So their whole lives to this point has been bookended by a country in crisis. The second half of their senior year undone by a pandemic. Right now, graduation ceremonies as we knew them, and proms, not happening. No dress shopping, no corsages or boutonnieres, no fancy dinners, no awkward dancing in the high school cafeteria or gymnasium. So schools are finding innovative ways to make sure their seniors can still make even just a few of those missed memories. Like one school in Eastern Oregon who decided they were still going to announce the 2020 prom king and queen, but in a very 2020 sort of way. Meet Vail High School's pandemic prom king and queen, Jeremiah, and that's Brianna right there. They were surprised with t-shirts with a roll of toilet paper on the front as well, and they found their cars wrapped in what else? Toilet paper. And you know what? I can't think of a more festive fit for a king and queen because they can use that in their throne room, right? And how happy were they about being king and queen? Well, they couldn't wipe the smile from their faces, but they could, never mind. Yeah, it's a hot commodity turned into a real pandemic potty. Like potty people? Okay, I'm done. I feel like I need to take a shower now. Okay, this is just one of the hundreds of events put on by parents and staff at schools across the country. The class of COVID-19, well, they're not going to go out quietly. You know those senior photos of students standing alone in an empty field? Pretty fitting in these days of social isolation. And so are prom parades. Send us more of that. If you happen to capture a unique senior send-off or have hundreds turn out for a turned-up cat and gown celebration, yeah, we want to see it. Make sure to send them to us. You can see all the ways right there on your screen that you can do that. We'll showcase some of them as they are sent in. We'll be right back. All right, as always, making the 2-8 more of a conversation. Let's take a look at some of your comments as you sent in during today's show. Any information on when national forests will be opening up for camping? Latest I've seen is the end of June, but I would sure hope it'd be sooner than that. That's from Travis Walker. And Travis, I think that's part of Governor Little's plan. It's part of phase 3, the end of non-essential travel. Like you can actually go out and do things at that point. It's probably more like the beginning of June, but pay attention in case any of that changes. But right now, still considered non-essential travel. So if you don't have to, don't go. As per the description of tracking a client contact versus random restaurant attendees, would not a hair salon business be exactly that? Prime, cleanliness, one-on-one as well with a known client, just curious and shaggy. That is a good point. And that's a question a lot of people have had during this. How are we breaking this up? And I can only say that sometimes even the governor doesn't have a definitive answer when it comes to this. We just know that salons are kind of toward the back end. Maybe it's the close proximity, and maybe it's that long-term contact with somebody that puts it into that later stage. Still, it's kind of, we're figuring this out as we go along. Cinco de Mayo, national holiday? It is not. It's not. Sorry to break that to you. So you aren't worried that the numbers of people being tested is lower, so of course the number of positive tests are lower. Shouldn't we be testing more people and set up contact tracing? More testing is recommended. Yes, Tim, we should be doing more testing. But if you go around and look at some of these places that are doing the testing, there's not a lineup, not a lot of people showing up. And I don't know if that's because they don't feel like they fit the criteria, or maybe we just don't have enough people with symptoms out there to go get tested. So either way, the testing is going down. But yes, we could test everybody who is, quote, asymptomatic, but who's going to do that? Who's going to go out and volunteer to get tested? You can, just not sure we've reached that realm yet of going out and just testing everybody because we're still limiting some of the tests out there and how many are available. I confess, I didn't like the idea of the 208, but I gave you a chance and I enjoy the program very much. However, can you please find a less annoying theme song from Diana? No, we spent a lot of time picking that song. What's wrong with it? We kind of like that song. And thumbs up to Kim Fields for all the people who have found creative ways to adjust to the challenge. Yes, we're all figuring this out as we go along. Let's continue to do that for just a little bit longer.